Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. This is the show where we take a look at every classic Doctor Who story, plus a bunch of big finish audio dramas at one episode a day, 7 days a week. And today, on the 12th of October 2018, we are starting the first in a series of 3 videos, 3 overarching stories, in this first run, where the 4th Doctor does not have a companion. This is, of course, starting with The Deadly Assassin, which is a story all about Gallifrey and Gallifreyan culture and an assassin that kills the Lord President of Gallifrey and initially tries to frame the Doctor. Oddly enough, the President is killed right when, well, he was intending to resign from the post and name a successor. So this is all really a story about building up political turmoil. It is something that it's written by Robert Holmes, and oddly enough has a really good guest cast. Bernard Horsfall is playing Chancellor Goth. We are introduced to Time Lord Cardinal Barusa, who is someone who knew the Doctor in the past. Castellan Spandrel, whose character will appear a couple of times. And basically just a bunch of characters who, will become important, much important later with different Doctors. Even down the line, even with this Doctor down the line, it's a moment of we have all these new characters, and oddly enough, the first episode is just setup, and it's really well done setup. Let's be honest. A lot of the story is the Doctor trying to evade the Time Lords because he comes back without... He received a call to Gallifrey because someone's trying to frame him. This man in a hood, referred to as another hooded man's master, potentially the master. Yeah, that master. One of those... it's one of those interesting stories in that you have this character who who wants to see the Doctor dead. It's one of those things where one of those stories where we have a lot of Gallifrey. We see that there are chapter houses. The Doctor is a Pridonian, is mentioned for the first time. You have Runcible, who is a character who is essentially parodying journalism, and journalists is like sort of this joke. It's one of those. This is one of those stories where everything builds up to the conclusion where the President is killed, and it seems that the Doctor actually did it, which is really interesting. It's one of those things that looks like the Doctor did it, and even at the very end, that's the cliffhanger, which is, I think, really well done. Like, we have this build up that the Doctor could be, have done something totally and completely evil, and something out of character for him. It's something that I have to question. Everyone really has to question it. It's like, really? Did he really just shoot down the president of the Time Lords? With it's one of those things. It's a story where everything is built around this whole assassination plot, and it's an interesting assassination plot. You have a bunch of interesting characters. Now, I think some people will criticize this and say it's a little sexist because there's no female characters, but let's be honest, we're only seeing a small part of Gallifrey, and these are just, and we hear a female voice on a computer, so there are obviously time ladies that exist. They just haven't. They just aren't, and I think. I think just overall, you really need to look at this episode. It's a perfect example of how to do things. David Maloney is directing. Robert Holmes' writing's on top form. There are jokes. The episode makes you, it's weird. We get to see the Doctor out of costume in this Time Lord garb, and it does a lot of good things. I think even that little flaw that maybe there could have been more female characters, at least for this first episode, really can be overcome. It's a fun, amazing episode. We have terror and fear. So I'm going to give The Deadly Assassin Part 1 the perfect 10 out of 10 score that it deserves. Alright, it is the 13th of October 2018, and I just finished watching Part 2 of The Deadly Assassin. And Part 2 of The Deadly Assassin actually keeps up the intrigue and almost everything that the story had going for it. We don't get any information here. We know that someone's been messing about with the Matrix, so the Doctor has to go in. The Doctor has to go in and basically, figure everything out. Basically, he has to go in and make sure that everything is okay at the very, very end. But that's only after he has already been arrested. He was already arrested for doing the being killing the president, and he essentially invokes Article 70 to put himself up for candidate to replace the president, which, okay, that doesn't actually, it doesn't really give him a decent a decent that doesn't give him an actual doesn't make him immediately be cleared. It also actually kind of is like, hey, I might actually be guilty. But what's more interesting is that he proves he didn't do it, because he sort of proves that the thing itself, the entire assassination plot, and the whole idea that there is that there is the there is the the whole assassination plot couldn't have been done by him, because this was a setup that it actually happened in a different place. Also, two other people die. Runcible, who's it's actually quite sad that Runcible dies, because he was set up as a really fun character. He was the sort of a butt of the jokes, but he gets killed. His technician then gets killed, and Shrunk sort of basically this is probably the master. Let's be honest here, which I think is an interesting sort of it's an interesting idea that it's that it's the that it's the that's the master who is for some reason completely decayed, which it's interesting. is we're getting more, of course, an explanation of it. But also, we have a chance to go into the Matrix itself, which is sort of one of those interesting sort of ideas about Doctor Who in general. You know, it's there are these very very oddly you know built built around the it's one of those interesting sort of stories where it builds towards the end. You have like the sequence with a samurai who cuts the Doctor off of a cliff, and then basically it's basically what the Matrix is like, the from the film The Matrix. Doctor gets cut off and just thrown down a cliff. He sees a random clown. A surgeon ties him to a table and is going to inject him with something. The big cliffhanger is that that a train is coming to kill him. Like, this is just an amazing sort of thing. Like, it just does this this odd it's a very odd it's a very odd sort of story. Like, it ends very weirdly, and it's really well done. It's amazing. You have the investigation. It just sort of grips you at your seat. Like, there's a lot of just a lot of a lot of a lot of built-in things. So I'm going to give Deadly Assassin Part 2 another 10 out of 10. Alright, it is the 14th of October 2018, and I just finished watching Part 3 of The Deadly Assassin. And Part 3 of The Deadly Assassin is an example of how to do a story without doing an episode without a lot of dialogue. Oddly enough, a lot of the personal episode of this one is the Doctor is trapped in the Matrix. And being trapped in the Matrix, of course, means that he's on his own. He doesn't have a person to interact with. Yes, the Master is, and the Master's agent is most definitely, messing with things. But this episode feels more like an acid trip, sort of in the vein of The Mind Robber, but it's really dark. Like, of course, the last episode you had the clown and then the train, but this one you have fighter pilots and eyes and things where and a hunter hunting him, and it's honestly really, really good. Like, that's a lot of the plot itself. Well, you have Spandrel and Engen outside the Matrix, sort of just talking about the Doctor and sort of his progress, like trying to add stakes to it, just because that's also something that's very, very important for the story, that we know what the stakes are and where things are going from here. What's also kind of important is that we don't ever really have the reveal of who the villain is yet. Obviously, the Doctor kind of realizes that it's the Master with the whole people being shrunk down in Part 2. But this is Part 3, and he doesn't know who's working with the Master, or even what the Master's plan is. They know that the Master tried to kill the President, and with killing the President, of the Lord President, he had, he has some sort of a plan to, take over Gallifrey, take over all power on Gallifrey. And the Doctor has an entire, the entire episode is centered around the big, just hunting through this forest, and you have World War II fighter pilots, and you have a lot of this surreal imagery. A lot of it is wartime imagery. And with the wartime imagery, you have the extreme
a lot of the, the big set pieces of the story, with just the ideas around it, and the big ending is that the guy who hunts the Doctor is drowning him, and it's a really intense sequence. Like, this is a reason. This is the episode where that Mary Lighthouse was basically like, you can't do this on television. I personally don't agree with her. I think that that the biggest problem would be, it's just that it's a matter of, you need to understand, like, this is a cliffhanger. The Doctor could be in peril. And I think people can understand that, like, waiting a week, that's going to get people to watch this show. Like, the cliffhanger is dark, and I love it. It does an amazing job of just, making you think the Doctor's probably dead with this one. Like, there is no way he could have gotten out of it alive. Like, how's he going to survive? So all in all, it's just amazing. I'm going to give The Deadly Assassin Part 3 another 10 out of 10, because this is it's the perfect build-up.
All right, it is the 15th of October 2018, and I just finished watching Part 4 of The Deadly Assassin. And Part 4 of The Deadly Assassin is when the story is the final part of the story, bringing the story to a rather fitting conclusion. Like quite a lot of Doctor Who stories, this one is interesting in that, unlike other stories, it's one where everything ends with the villain. We begin the episode with a fake out that the Master might actually be dead, have been killed in the Matrix. With Goth, because Goth, of course, was the hunter, hunting the Doctor and working with the Master, being evil and all that. But what's interesting is that the Doctor doesn't buy it for one bit. He just knows the Master kind of has to be alive until he figures out exactly how and what his plan is. It turns out the Master's plan is the Master we knew as the Master, as played by Roger Delgado, was nearing his last regeneration, explaining why he appears in this story in a burnt state, which is honestly a really good and creepy design, that burnt state of the Master. And in that burnt state, he's essentially dying. He needs to have the Doctor basically be there to allow him to survive. He is trying to steal Time Lord artifacts that will allow him to extend his life, which, sounds like a masterly plot. He's trying to take over the Eye of Harmony, which is this black hole that Rassilon took power of, and, founded Time Lord Society on, including some artifacts which are still used. So basically his plan was, I'm going to kill the president will die, I will be able to take over, I will be able to, ruse myself into dying, take over, and essentially play the Doctor so I can get what I want. And it's a really smart plan overall, mainly because it works. The Doctor falls for it hook, line, and sinker, and without the Doctor being there to realize, wait, we've all been played, the Master would have probably won. Of course, there's also the big show, and the rest of the episode is basically a big showdown. The Master loses, but he also escapes, meaning he could easily come back in that decayed form. Something that, of course, we know he is going to do. He's eventually going to come back, because the Master never stays dead for long. It was constant through the Pertwee era. It is now constant through the Tom Baker era. This is also the only appearance, television or audio-wise, of Peter Pratt as the Master, who is a very, very good actor for the role. He plays the manic villain with relish in this episode. He has a suitably creepy voice. Oddly enough, he is more well known as an opera singer, which is quite an interesting little tidbit of knowledge there. So you do have he's more of an operatic villain. But he takes the role seriously, which helps. He's obviously not Roger Delgado. It's really hard. It was always difficult to replace Delgado, so Holmes obviously went for a different type of Master, a different, Master at a more desperate stage. He's not the suave Roger Delgado character. Something that I think helps, genuinely does help the story, that, the Master's he's not crazy, he's not the suave, he's more at the end of his rope, he could die at any minute version of the character. Other things that I really, really like about this episode is that the Doctor gets to leave. We have quite a bit of politics of Cardinal Bruce basically saying, right, I will bend the truth, it'll be fine. Something that is very interesting is that the truth is, of course, then, he will bend the truth. The Doctor will get a free pardon as long as he leaves and allows us to do this, because that's what we Time Lords do. We aren't this noble race. We are pretty corrupt. And you know what? A lot of people will give claim to the issues of Time Lords being becoming less mysterious by this, and yes, they do kind of get rid of the mystery a little bit. Not quite in this one. It's honestly their further appearances on television that do that, with obviously the invasion of time and stories like that. But this one kind of started it, which was kind of a shame. We also get, nothing has changed on Gallifrey except that it's just safe and the Doctor is allowed to leave. So yeah, the Doctor, doesn't have a companion at the end of the story. We are still companionless. And we will be for a couple more videos. But that being said, it's been a good ride, the 4 episodes of The Deadly Assassin, so I will be giving The Deadly Assassin Part 4 a 10 out of 10. That being said, we take the 4 episodes, add them up, and average the score to give The Deadly Assassin a final score of 10 out of 10. Thank everybody for watching this installment of the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and next time, we'll actually be taking a break from televised Doctor Who and jumping to our first Big Finish audio drama with Tom Baker, though not one of the first ones that were released, though the earliest chronological one, with Night of the VASHTA NERADA.